how much time do I spend on technology every day versus, directly talking with people?
Do you guys think religion is also a technology? I sometimes characterize it that way.
Let's talk about government as well, because that's what I call the algorithm.
My mind's going to be racing all night because of so much. Everything.
See them grow. Those are the kinds of things that are transcendental. Those are the kinds of things that are most rewarding in life, and they often show up between people. And devices can enable some of that, but there's a huge cost. What brings us together is the things that we achieve together, things that we actually work on together, the things that we participate in that define how we socialize. And it's not handed down to us. It's not rules that are just given by those up on high. I'm going to say some things later about government where I don't have a lot of faith in some of the governance institutions we have. One of my best friends, Justin, says, hey, the most efficient form of government is a dictatorship. And he's absolutely right. Yeah, if you want efficiency, that's what you go to. But I don't think that's what we want in our lives. And that's not what gets us to those transcendent values. So tech, great. It's given us some great things. Knowledge, science that we can get on YouTube and Khan Academy and learn things so quickly. And now with ChatGPT and our bots, they're actually marvelous at teaching us things. It's fantastic. And at a scale, we've never seen before. And the connections that we have. So I can call my mom tonight. She's in Kansas City, and I better remember to do that because I forget some Sundays. But they're not the long-running relationships. They're not the long-running connections that we have. And so, okay, so far tech has got some good things, but where have the benefits of technology gone? The majority of the benefits of tech have gone to organizations. They haven't gone directly to the connections that we have. TikTok, the algorithms, the engagement, the ad spend, those are the things that have gotten the most traction. And that's what tech pulls us towards. So it hasn't been towards our spiritual lives. And, the work that I do in technology, it supports some of these mechanisms. Like my latest work was in county recorders, where we deal with land rights, and people want to know that if they own a land or a property, that they can work on it. We did some of that work in Rwanda, and there was a huge interest because they're very insecure in their rights there. But our technology didn't solve those. It's mostly all of the social problems around it is the biggest part of the work. The technology, just recording it and having somebody stamp it isn't the solution. So, it could be different, but that's just the way that the world is right now. So we should be organizations that dictate the meaning that supports our jobs, our salaries, that pays us money. And we give our attention to these things. There's always the argument that AI will save us from this. Okay, I'm hearing laughs, so this is good because, hearing that argument that it's, going to, all of this knowledge is somehow going to reward us. There's still incentives on running those algorithms and who gets to manage the token spend that goes to what purposes. And, that is still something that's managed by people in the end. And so that alone is not going to save us. Let's talk about government as well, because that's what I call the algorithms. That's, laws that are enshrined. And so police will come and enforce the rules that were set up. And those are supposed to be for our good, right? For peace. We've had some great benefits. We never would have had nuclear power without large S of the government applying to that. Same thing for space exploration. But this last century was the century of democide. I'd argue that the large governments, I mean, this is just one factor, but it's hundreds of millions of people that were killed by their own governments. This isn't warring neighbors. This isn't civil wars even. This is the government actively oppressed and murdered. And, some of it was due to famine induced and things like that. But, can you imagine just that much death that is caused by these institutions? And on top of that, the oppression that would happen at the same time. How many people had to live lives segregated and cloistered, and how much creativity did that squash? Hundreds of millions of people. So I haven't read this book. I want to. The Utopia of Rules: Technology, Stupidity, and the Secret Joys of Bureaucracy. I feel like we might be caught in that, especially in America. There's all the cry for legislation to solve problems. Now, there's all alternative ways that we could be doing things. It's going to be harder and harder as, say, governments get more and more control, especially over our digital lives. It used to be that we had common law in England. That's how things started out in small communities, small governance. When there was a dispute, then something was decided, and then that became precedent that you could judge against for future decisions. Eventually, it got twisted. The king and the court used to just oversee the ways that they did it to make sure they followed, good standard rules, but it got flipped to where now they were deciding the rules. Rules were actually made by fiat, so that's where we come up with statutory law. And now that's what the world we live in. Legislators create laws because they're trying to solve problems rather than, hey, we have disputes and here's the precedent for previous disputes, or we resolve it. That may mean that we don't have, we aren't not keeping the children safe in some ways. That may mean we're not guarding against every possible traffic infraction. There's certain things, safety, that we don't get if we actually go by common law. But there's other alternative ways. For example, indigenous peoples had different ways of governing that we could learn from. Part of the problem is that we beg for this ourselves. We think of retirement and it's just, okay, how much do we have to save to get there? Rather than, hey, what kind of family are we building so that we have that support when we get older? And of course, along the way, we rack up debt. We got to pay off that debt. The banks are more than happy to get us into that. Another part is we've heard of stakeholder capitalism recently, where, hey, okay, the government's going to take parts of companies and then that will trickle down to us, with the benefits of those. In my mind, that just enables some more cronyism at that level. And, how much do we actually get at the end? It also, I feel like it empowers the corporate power. So, for example, BlackRock, who's buying all kinds of land and homes in areas, that, of course, lift prices and things, but is also, who, as a neighbor, who do you work with when you want? I have friends who've built roads between their houses. And it's like, who do you talk with if you wanted to build a road or you wanted to solve a problem in your cul-de-sac? And they are remote. You want to be able to work with your neighbors. And anyway, there's a problem if they own so much of the so much property. Aladdin is the name of their algorithm. So, this may just be the way the world is. My friend Robbie says, I like your vision of what things could be, but you know what? We ended up with the world we have because we had indigenous people here and they were beat. It's just nowadays, it's those with the bigger guns that get society the way they want it to be. They support the bankers and the merchants, and that's who's going to win. So I hope not. I will read this just in case you can't see it all. he's saying, giving a story around a campfire saying, yes, the planet got destroyed, but for a beautiful moment in time, we created a lot of value for stakeholders, for shareholders. May just be the way the world's going, and we just have to be as judicious as we can with our families and friends and loved ones and people here in good communities. I've got a little bit of a tangent here because this is the Mormon Transhumanist Association, and it sounds like you're using the word transfigurism now. Which,
Oh no, we that is the name, but
Okay.
that's just like the domain name. I
the
mean,
domain name, right.
Transfigure was always this thing that was like something we wanted to to promote, but it was like we knew it was aspirational.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I can't wait to talk afterwards because, I mean, trans is beyond. So what beyond humanism? So does that mean it's post-humanism? I mean, enhancement seems like an okay idea, but when it comes to, if we're going to get beyond that, what does that mean? Is it an organism that we have created and we understand it, or created and we don't understand it, and there's problems either way with that? So anyway, that will, I'm sure, come out in our discussion. Okay, technologists love peer-to-peer technologies. These are, directly interacting technologies. We've got blockchain with Bitcoin and Monero, and then we've got mesh-tastic networks with low-power radio signals that we can connect directly between each other. And I've always loved that. But, and I'll just mention my biggest project is gifteconomies.org, where I'm trying to create more and more interactions that are gift and actually create actual sustainable living based on those. I think that would be fun, but maybe that's still a technology that's getting in between people, and I may be totally wrong on that, and this may be a digression. And thanks, to Carl, I've got an insightful comment here where he said, I had him install it, and he said, okay, yeah, but the work of tracking and curating contributions could get kind of tedious. Exactly. That's the kind of interaction you don't want.
I didn't mean to be too critical.
Well, now you say.
That's a quote.
It's
Just let the record show.
Right. So I got to admit, this is about me. This is my experience in the industry. I live in tech. I have spent my time making tech problems work, and planning with others to make it work, and planning to solve things just with tech. And, that it empowers other organizations, it empowers systems. I haven't seen how it empowers people. And that's why I'm giving this talk. So for me, part of the solution has been trying to right-size the time that I spend. How much time do I spend on technology every day versus, directly talking with people? So how of it is on the technical problems versus the people problems, problems people have directly with one another and, in their lives, just empowering each other. And then are the technical solutions real, or do they, give more power to someone like the banks? Sorry, I don't mean to call them out. It's just, I don't have a lot of respect for today's banks. Okay, so that's how I try and ask myself the right questions. And this is my goal, to spend as much time directly with people. Even though I work in technology, I can't leave it to my product managers to be the ones that are talking to my customers. I should be involved in talking to humans and making the solutions, and hopefully I'll right-size that in my own life. So happy to have this discussion rather than just a talk, because I can't wait to hear other people's impressions and gain real understanding of what is progress, and maybe there may not be any way to measure it. It's just something that we always have to feel, but I'm open to other opinions. So fight me. Yeah, go ahead and any questions or comments or discussion points.
You ready?
Go.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I guess I'll kick it off by saying your question about transhumanism is a good one. And
it's often one of the first ones that we get. And I think that it's a debate that's even being had amongst transhumanists is like one of the things on our website that in our introductory essays about what we believe in that we talk about is that we've kind of downplayed the use of the term post-human. Some transhumanists have used that term to talk about whatever state we're in way down the future. So the idea being like, if you think about the way we are now compared to, let's say, the way our pre-human ancestors were, it's different enough that we think of humanity as a different species altogether. And so when transhumanists use that term post-human, they're thinking of a state that's so different from what we are now that it merits being called something else. However, we sort of feel like the term post-human could have a dehumanizing overtone to it, where it's like, what kind of post-human are you talking about? It could be something, someone could imagine that to be a state that is deficient in some way, or lacks something really valuable that we value in being human. So we started using the term superhuman to talk about that state, or superhumanity.
Nice.
Now, there still are dangers in using that term because some people, when they hear that term, imagine some solitary superhero who's like taking over and fixing everything, right? Which is more like a dictator than like a collective, transcendent humanity, right? So getting the feel or the vibe right is hard, and but that is what we've tried to do in the work that we're doing, and especially we've used Christ as kind of the ideal human. And the interesting thing about that metaphor is that the Christian world also has a collective metaphor for Christ, right? When Paul talked about the body of Christ and how every member of that body has a purpose and a function. So it doesn't have to be just an individual. You could aspire to being more Christ-like as an individual, but you could also do it as a community, So that, anyway, that's my short version of like the kind of transhumanism we're going at. Right?
Yeah.
So
As according to Carl.
right. So I mean, if you guys disagree, like chime in, like
throwing in one other data point there, and I went to Singularity Summit 2011. It's the only one I've been to, so I don't know how representative it is, but was a gathering of many transhumanists, and the theme of the year was sort of like emphasizing humanism as like kind of humanism encompasses transhumanism. Like it is a very human thing to use to think about how hopefully wisely to better yourselves and to use technology in to that end. And I think I've sometimes heard post-human as just not even necessarily an aspirational thing, but as what are all of the places that are reachable from, like whether or not it's advisable, starting from the point of the human. One way that you can reach a state is by stripping parts of your humanity away. So probably don't do that.
But this is actually a really good point because we are already transhumans in the sense that to be human is to have your reach exceed your grasp, right? To be human is to try to fix things that you don't like. And also, if we look at the core technologies of humanity, which I always go back to cooking and clothing, like there was a time when humans didn't wear clothes and when they didn't cook their food, or maybe you could call those pre-humans, but like for all intents and purposes, to be human is to wear clothing. Like nobody walks around for the most part naked all the time, and our brains actually evolved and adapted to cooking. And so we're not a static species. We're actually always in a state of changing things. And that's kind of part of what it means to be human.
I have a question about your presentation. You talked a lot about how technology can spiritually hurt us. In your imagination, is there a possibility space in which it enhances us spiritually?
I'll admit I haven't seen much of that.
Really? Okay.
There are people that have, apps and things that, try and connect. I love to read poetry online. And then, so there's little,
Because you read poetry without the invention of writing.
Yeah, we have to decide about technology. What we're
True.
writing is technology.
true.
So we're really,
I would have,
we go deep on what tech is.
yeah. No, that's great.
Like, we're not just thinking of like iPhones and
Yeah.
Chrome and like souped up cars. We're thinking of like the full gamut of what tech is, right?
Absolutely.
Hence,
So I-
democracy and all of it.
Say that again.
Hence,
Hence democracy.
democracy, technology,
Right.
forward.
Right. So, okay, writing, let's go back to that basic one. Did we gain anything spiritually from being able to
I think
write?
so.
And so the communication we had before that, verbal, and it's funny how we might be getting back to verbal now.
Right, yeah.
Interactions.
Yeah.
But did, we can share, we can share poetry and that can be inspiring. So let's see, that is a good counter argument. I'm going to keep thinking about that one.
So another interesting thing is we have this scripture that says in the beginning was the word, right?
Yeah.
It almost implies that like something about writing was like godly or whatever. I don't know. And that
Speech language, that's a good.
Yeah, that's true. It could be just speech. Yeah.
So that would support, I would say, yeah, it definitely supports us in being able to evoke our spirituality that's already there. Does it really build anything that wasn't already there? Does writing give someone who didn't have that spiritual aspect, something new? And I don't know what it does. I feel like if you had those sensibilities, and you didn't have writing, you would find that reward in other ways. So, but that's not a great argument back. So I'm going to keep thinking about that.
So it sounds like it's more of an enhancement than something changes. So for someone who's a poet, in order for them to enhance their spirituality, the tool of language itself then becomes the expression of that thing. So without the tool, you can't have the expression. So similar with like maybe I don't know, you said the church has a website. So the church has a website, it's able to contact people and use technology and things to amplify and enhance. So did that mean like all of a sudden the church became more spiritual with the internet? I don't know, maybe, but it definitely did become more powerful.
Became more influential.
Yeah, so more
spread the
influential.
knowledge, yeah.
Exactly.
That I can see.
So I think there is a possibility, because it definitely can spiritually hurt us, absolutely. But there's a possibility space in which it actually enhances. I don't know. Imagine using like a chatbot to prepare your spiritual lessons or your Sunday school lessons or whatever.
But wouldn't that already come from, you're making it happen because you've got that spiritual hunger inside you that's doing it, and it maybe enhances it. It allows you to generate more content for sure, maybe generate more interesting pictures.
More slop too.
Yeah. But does it bring out more of the spirituality? I feel like the language, the speech, you've got me on that one, because that is a core thing that we can now, I like forgiveness, or connection between me and my wife and sharing goals. Those actually totally elevate our spiritual connection. That's a good counter argument. I don't know that I see it in today's internet.
I think I really like in your gifteconomies.org. Actually, one of the paragraphs here, you say, we're growing a digital platform that helps people connect locally, share resources, and support one another directly without middlemen or gatekeepers. Whether it's sharing a meal, lending a skill, or helping a neighbor, this tool will make generosity easier, safer, and more visible. Its technology is designed not to take your attention, but to give it back to your community. And something that stands out on your own website is this idea that these tools make it easier, safer, and more visible. I know for me, I feel like I can grow spiritually the most when I'm safe, when I feel safe. And I feel like my ego doesn't want to be in a self-preservation mode. And then it can just feel very, it just feels like really safe. And so I think it's cool that even your own website here is like saying something that's like, it's a way to spiritually enhance us, in my opinion. So
Interesting.
Yeah, kind of building off of that comment on the last, sorry, did you raise your hand?
Yeah.
Okay, raise your hand. Later.
Like segues in reverse order. The feeling safe as a prerequisite. Someone can shout out which prophet it was that talked about their mission experience of giving a tract to a woman who took it and asked, "Is this going to help me buy bread?" And hand it back. You can't blame people for not being spiritual when they're dying. So yeah, like anything that enhances those things, spirituality affirming. To jump back 1600 years farther from that, we've got this is pure religion or this is true piety, depending on translation, to care for the widow and the orphan. So first question is, I missed the beginning. Did we talk about like good definition space of spirituality and whether like
No, that's a good
feeding people is the most important thing about religion, as some of the more heretical early Christian writers would say, and then segueing out of that, second question, mutual aid organizations that are an extremely important technology for actually, in the society we're in, getting food to people.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Yeah. Have you talked with them? Is there a second question?
Real quick on that one, like don't put too many out at once because we won't be able to answer this one.
But I tried to specify.
But I like this. Like first thing, like the one you mentioned, visiting with the widow and the fatherless. I bet if you look at what you're doing in those activities, you're using tech to feed them. And then also, I think your point about mutual aid societies is really good because like we don't often think of some other inventions like religion, corporations, commerce, trade, all sorts of human organizations, human ways of organizing themselves as tech, but really it is technology. It's like
hospitality expectations is a technology, and it made human insane travel for extremely early humans possible.
Yes,
you could just absolutely everybody in my language group, I know what to expect when I show up on their doorstep.
Yeah.
And that was incredibly beneficial to us. So yeah.
Do you guys think religion is also a technology? I sometimes characterize it that way.
Good third question.
I think religion is a technology.
I would have said no. I want to keep hearing what you have to say.
Yeah. What I'm thinking of is that there may be a time when you go back far enough to where whatever it was, and by the way, whenever it starts driving you crazy, I can take him out and I can put him outside. He just
I can tell him
too
no,
affectionate.
but, yeah.
He's a little too. But anyway, I do think that there may have been a time when humans didn't organize themselves the way they do and didn't have these elaborate rituals and these ways of engaging with each other in what we think of as religion today. And I do think those are like social accumulations, kind of like developments that took place over time. And so if you think of technology as applied knowledge, which is one of the core definitions of technology, it's sort of, you could say that the knowledge of like how to ritualize various practices and beliefs in a way that allows them to be sustained by larger bodies of people, that could be thought of as a type of social technology.
Kind of analogous to writing code, right? Like the code is not the hard wires that it's running on. It is
patterns.
Yeah, it's applied knowledge that is then able to be distributed in a way that's understood and can connect people in a way.
Yeah.
So the two questions were like
And you might have-
defining spirituality as maybe just caring for the widow and the fatherless and
What's the extent of it? Like, what's
yeah,
the
like
extent
like
of
what
it?
what definition are you working with for spirituality? When we say technology and algorithms are depreciating spirituality or enhancing it, what is spirituality in your eyes? And the second one was, have you talked to mutual aid societies?
Yeah, you talk with mutual aid or just like, what do they think about, like, what do time banks think about what you're prioritizing with gift economy stuff? Because I also didn't learn about that because I was starting because traffic was.
There's lots of upside.
So I'll,
Upside down car, so that's our excuse.
right. I'm trying to remember all of these. Oh, religion. Yeah. Because I'm going to forget. All right. So I'm going to start with the last one first with the mutual aid societies. Love, I mean, that is somebody getting together. And if you want to call that a technology, yeah, I guess that was outside of my thinking what a technology is. We get together, we, may have a way we organize, but that's the key part of that is coming together and meeting and doing. A lot of today's benefit organizations are third-party things. We delegate. We pay the Bountiful Food Pantry. They do a great job, but it's been shown that they haven't really reduced the rate of poverty. And the ones that, like time banking, is a great idea. I've enjoyed some of those stories, Berkshire's and whatever, but they're still focused on this technology of trade and exact accounting. Which is, I think the safety part is a good argument, and I'm still wrestling with that one. But I don't think that I don't know how the technology, say, of money or the mutual aid automatically builds anything with spirituality. In fact, I think it does serve to pull us apart if we're not careful.
What about the argument that like money enables more, it facilitates an exchange of value.
Mm-hmm.
And so therefore it produces greater prosperity, generally speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And a modicum of prosperity is necessary for us to meet the baseline of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And like was said earlier, like you're not going to be wanting to hear much about the gospel if you're starving to death.
Yeah, and that's what I'm still wrestling with, that safety one. So we've got speech that's a very, very good example. You've got the safety. So when you brought that out, you felt like there might be tech or internet that has built your sense of safety.
Yeah, like especially the first part of the paragraph. Like
My words. Yeah, I say a lot on there. But have you seen examples of how that has helped? Like you have been helped in your safety from tech and internet.
Yeah. How am I asked to think about a specific example? What? Yes, like all the time. I'm sorry, a specific example.
I can literally tell my girls if I'm going somewhere that I don't feel safe at, and we automatically build a community with the technology. We have apps for it.
Right, because you
We
can
take
follow
care of
each other.
and make ourselves safe. Always sharing.
You could say I'm walking home now.
Yeah.
If you don't hear from me in
Yeah,
in
and
the
you
next
can
15 minutes.
which you can do it with stranger women, women I've never met, and be like, I am in this location.
Wow.
Like,
Okay.
so there's lots of safety there.
Yeah, so earlier, one thing I thought of was like maybe somebody, as far as it enhancing their spiritual development, like maybe somebody wants to talk to their pastor or bishop and like they don't feel comfortable approaching them after the sermon. And like once websites were created for churches, they finally were able to send an email to staff. And also, I guess I'm curious your take on the fact that there used to be sexual assault crisis hotlines that you had to call in from. And so there used to be like one landline for the family. Most of the time someone's assaulted is family. And then it became like, okay, there are websites now and you don't have to worry someone's going to like hear you in the next room. You can do it online. But I did training for one of these for the national one for RAIN. And I remember this was like 2007, feeling like I didn't like graduate from there totally certain of how to talk through somebody, how to block the text. So like that could be a vulnerability where like somebody thinks they're in a safe environment, but like it's not really safe. Don't worry, I didn't end up volunteering because I moved out of state and stuff. But like decided to like get anybody into a compromised situation. But I don't know. Yeah, I'm curious just your response to all that. Like the premise, the veneer of safety maybe where it's not like fully underwritten.
Sorry, I'll let you answer because
I don't have an answer for that one. I'm just writing it down.
Sure.
I'm going to have to go. In fact, I want to, before you go on, you mentioned two. You mentioned the mutual aid.
I was just echoing that, and then I have my own, but we haven't gotten to those yet.
by the way, don't feel like you need to like totally answer all this. Like
These are good criticisms that, I want to go away with and think about.
this is really an exploration, and
Yeah.
one of the things I maybe should have mentioned is like we often disagree with each other about things. Like, and all we ask is that people engage respectfully, but like each person here may have slightly different opinions about stuff. So don't feel like it's everyone against just this or whatever.
Yeah, no, I'm offended. I'm going home any minute, but go ahead.
I was also gonna
changed my view of
I don't actually have an opinion. I don't feel like
well, so Francel brought up something interesting, which made me think about the Catholic Church. Actually, their practice of confession is really interesting because it's a ritual that everyone is expected to perform regularly. It's supposed to go every week, as far as I understand. So it's not something that anyone would think ill of you for going to the confession booth because it's like, oh no, you're just doing what everyone else does, right? And then once you're there, it's supposed to be totally confidential, and the priest is not supposed to even mention what's been said in there outside of that context, right? So that's a really interesting approach, very low tech, right? Relatively low tech, right? But interesting in that it. We can obviously see some situations where it might be abused, but like in a lot of cases,
I think we have.
Yeah. There's been evidence of abuse in the past. However, I would bet that there's also been lots of like positive examples coming from confession as well. But mostly I'm just pointing out that it's interesting because it's like a place where you can unburden yourself without anyone else having to be like shame you for it, right?
Totally. It's also with like one thing I liked about the Christian world is like it's not like are you going for premarital counseling? It's like to whose pastor? It's just assumed that like you get premarital counseling. Maybe you're engaged. And like I think in the secular world it's sort of like pathologized if you do that.
Right, yeah.
I think that's maybe fading a little bit. It used to be that if you were getting counseling, you were getting a divorce, and now I think it's much more common for people to seek out therapy with their spouse.
I think along with that, so they did the study on veterans in the military, and they got therapists to come talk with them to try to figure out what their PTSD symptoms were so they could get them help and access. Because of their training, if you're a Marine with PTSD, you can't say my symptom is I still wet the bed in PTSD, whatever they're going through. And so they set them up with chatbots and said, talk to the chatbot. Don't talk to a human, talk to the chatbot. And they got more in-depth information about their PTSD symptoms through the chatbots than they did talking to real people. And they knew, they're like, we're going to get this information and we're going to process it. But for a Marine who has been trained that certain things like nightmares are weak, things like that, they can't even talk about their symptoms with a human. They went through the medium of the technology to get access to the care they actually needed, safety.
I think that's
I think we're kind of turning a blind eye all the ways that technology is threatening us. Right? It's not look for the good. And just in the there's an app that helps keep you safe on the streets, but the ways that people can stop you have also been exponentially increased by technology.
Oh, stop? You said stop?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you said stop. Okay.
Stopping, and technology arms racing.
Yes.
In these settings of sexploitation online is now a big thing, or scammers are calling grandma, and her technological ineptitude is a weakness. And what do we do to deal with these problems? And so I think for me, the question of is technology good or bad is dumb. Like our dogs, good or bad. Like they might like you, but they are man's best friend. Like there's this dual nature.
Yeah,
And without like specifically deciding what aspects of technology we want to define or we want to discuss or what uses, like we're just gonna plug in circles and be like, oh, the fire can heat your food, but it could burn you. Like that's like at the very
So I think I appreciate that. I thank you because it brings me back to a point. It can be used for good. So let's go back to speech. Yes, that enabled all kinds of communication. You know, maybe poetry, maybe spiritually uplifting, but it also enabled all kinds of manipulation and all kinds of overriding. Religion, same thing. How many religions out there actually, you know, I would not trust with my spirituality. So overriding. Push, I feel like I'm still feeling like it might be negative. I'm starting to see there's reasons to go the other way, but there's so much more that pulls us away.
Yeah.
Did you want to finish?
Yeah, I think kind of what we're seeing with a lot of our examples, goes back to like what Blair said at the beginning. Technology empowers us.
It's the amplification
Right.
Of whatever.
And it's a question of like, yeah, we can take what we start with our kernel of essence and whatever, and then put it through an algorithm and get something out, and it can grow more good or more bad. But like the question, I don't know, for me, the idea of using a chatbot to like prepare a Sunday school lesson or like do something spiritual, for me feels like it robs my own spiritual growth, my own opportunity to like wrestle with the things. At best, it would empower my ability to like research inspirational material that I could like learn from and then add into my spiritual practice or something like that. So it empowers me to maybe go through a process faster, but it doesn't it doesn't change the process that I'm pursuing. Like if I want to say words that are pretty and make people be like, amen, hallelujah, I can do that, but if I actually want those words to mean something to me, I still have to go through the work of understanding what it means spiritually and then living them and experiencing them myself. And like to some level, I can like boost that with an algorithm, but I can't shortcut it.
Yeah, you see it by me here. I think that'll be a lot more empowering for me. Yeah.
Well, I have a question about that, and maybe trying to lean more towards like, is it more positive as like a question? One of my favorite books, Factfulness, something he says in it is that the world is still bad, but it's better than it's ever been before. And so if it is an amplification of us, if technology is, and we are safer than we've ever been before, then to me that's like does wonders for trying to see that it's like probably at a net positive. At least it's definitely worth it to hope that we can make it a net positive to put in the work for that. Because like I see those things and I see it like robbing the spirituality, but I also like how I engage with it spiritually is I see people and I see them say things or put communities together online directly, get rid of the middleman. You meet people more directly online and then I go, oh my gosh, I am going through the same thing you are. I'm not alone. And then I feel safer that I'm not alone. And then I put work towards talking with those people. And once I feel safe, I feel like I'm more open to ideas outside of what I currently believe. So it doesn't even feel like it's like enhancing my own echo chamber, my own algorithms. In a way, it feels like that safety opens me up towards trying to see different spiritual perspectives. And so at least the way that I engage with like technology feels overall just like a net positive because the world is bad, but it's safer than it's ever been.
Mm-hmm. And I have a feeling that most people in this group are, tending towards the positive part.
Yeah. There's selection bias, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. In fact, like our logo right here, see that? The wheel, the wagon wheel, symbolizes human ingenuity, and the wings are like divine aid. And so really what we're sort of promoting is this notion that we can use our ingenuity or whatever gifts we have. In fact, we think of those even as being like a part of the divine image, with God's help to kind of make the world a better place, you know. So,
And the sewing was done by a robot.
yeah.
I love that. I hope you win. Yeah. You have, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, on that, just like going back to some of your content, I think that one of the things that could resonate with a more of a transhumanist audience with what you're saying is that in terms of the evidence you were presenting and the negative impact, a lot of it was about the way that technologies has been used to centralize power within governments and within corporations. And the Mormon transhumanist vision of, you know, how these technologies should be used is necessarily messianic, meaning concerned for the least of these and the oppressed. And I think that where your argument resonates the most is not necessarily in theoretical, but in the demand it creates for receipts that are not there. I mean, that I would argue are not there. And that like the world is more unequal. Power is concentrated more than it's ever been in our world's history. And that's because of this technology. And like, you know, the commitment to the Mormon transhumanist vision of the world is an absolute ethical commitment to the decentralization of power. And that's kind of like the opposite of what we've seen in the last 10 years. Or
So I don't necessarily disagree, but I am curious about the ways that it's also empowered individuals. You know, like I'm still thinking through whether or not it's been a net centralization of power or a net decentralization of power. Because if you think about like,
well, that's measurable.
Some types of tech, like money, for example, is possibly like decentralizing power in the sense that it each individual who has like they have more autonomy
distributed.
Yeah.
No, I agree. But like they have like the autonomy to go and like procure things that maybe they used to have to rely on the manor lord to get, right? Or like I don't know.
Right, but these little pressure valves are also part of the mechanism that helps the power become centralized more too. So
sure,
you can always point to little things like that, but that's the big question is the macro question. I mean, we all should have a covenant against the singleton, which is like on the horizon, you know. So
Singularity.
Well, I mean, I'm just thinking about the ways that like individuals are empowered by technology as well. Like so, like. The fact that everyone has a device that they can communicate with anyone else in the world at a moment's notice is like a form of decentralization type empowerment, right? So
for sure, yeah.
Maybe
So what would what I want to know is
I mean,
what does the covenant
all the
of
time, right?
decentralization
Well,
look like?
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
Practically, like metaphorically.
Like just today, I made a phone call, right?
Yeah. I'm just saying, some of these things, like, because we have the technology and we're like, great, I can do this, but we have all these detractors, whether it's a power imbalance that's like distracting us or disincentivizing certain things that take some of that away from us. So like, yeah, the internet is extremely democratic. Like Nepal used it to great efficacy to restructure their government, right? Via like Discord. Other countries aren't doing that. We're still using like the electoral college that centralizes things.
What did Nepal do? Sorry, I was curious.
They use Discord to after they like had a coup, I think, to oust their previous person. They needed to choose a new person and use Discord.
So weird. Discord was adequately structured to be able to use it for real serious business.
They really had the organizational structure, the mutual aid type structure on the ground, like to use that tool really effectively. But even though we have the same tools, we don't have the same like power through either a lack of motive, a lack of aligned ethics, a lack of aligned spiritual values. And I get really frustrated that like I have all these tools in my life, but they are degrading my life because I can call my grandma anytime. But do I know I scroll on TikTok? Because that, even though I'm empowered by using TikTok, right? I'm empowered by using TikTok because I can make videos about things that are important to me and I can learn more about the world. But I end up with these distractions that are enriching corporations instead of allowing me to communicate and to connect with people that I know in real life and want to actually spend time with.
Does everyone remember back in the day when it was a hot question whether it was really evil or illegal to bundle a browser with an OS? Oh man.
That's been a while, yeah.
Yeah, like the
Or Netscape.
That's
Some people haven't like raised their hand, but yeah, and haven't spoken.
Yeah, I thought I'd share, I think, my perspective on it. I like that you brought up Maslow's hierarchy of needs already. So I think, like, as much as technology raises people out of the base level, right? Like,
Good point.
food, shelter, as much as technology can get people out of that into self-actualization, I think that's a spiritual net positive. But it doesn't necessitate that more technology means that that's happening. It's still just a tool. I look at it as a tool. I guess I don't remember your first slide about amorality, but that's come out. I look at technology, like whether or not if we use it, it's benefiting us spiritually. I think if we're already past those the base levels, it's a struggle if you're looking to help other people who are also at that level. But if you're able to use the technology to lift others, then I think that would be, again, a spiritual net positive. Right? Because you're lifting others to where they can now have more spiritual experiences and that.
It's really
I mean, it sounds like a few of us think that way, where like basically technology is orthogonal to morality, and so it depends on what it's used because it is an augmenter and an intensifier and whatever. I'm happy to be, after having just listened to a couple-hour podcast with Tristan Harris, who's the founder of the, Center for Humane Technology. He's the guy that did that documentary, The Social Dilemma.
Yeah.
And now he's been involved with this one, the AI doc. And he doesn't like the term doomer, but I kind of felt like, oh, this is good for me to get away from my MTA peeps and kind of listen to someone that's kind of a little more pessimistic on this, although he calls himself a apocalyptimist. So, but anyway, yeah, right. But it basically made me I thought he made a really good point in talking about, yes, you can use this for good and for bad, all kinds of technology, right? And specifically talking about once we got to the internet and especially social media and now AI, we're getting to a point where, as he puts it, the number of bad outcomes are infinitely more. There are just more options of ways this can go wrong than there are on ways that it can go right, which doesn't mean that it couldn't be the best, most utopian future ever, but it's not going to do that by accident. And so the questions that you're asking here were a lot of the same ones that they were kind of asking too, that I think that it becomes really incumbent upon anyone that is bullish on technology to say, you don't just build it and they will come, or you don't just do the approach that Sam Altman and every other AI person seems to be taking, which is, well, if I don't do it, someone else will do it. Therefore, let's charge full steam ahead without worrying about the brakes or maybe you get Anthropic occasionally saying something like, no, Mr. President, we don't want to hand you the ability to have AI,
but even that
make kill decisions. Right. They went to someone else. They jumped him and said,
well,
go
not only that, but Anthropic has been basically coerced into
right. So so it fails on both fronts. And I think it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The other thing I'm kind of throwing in here, I'm talking about my own views. I feel like I'm bullish on technology as its more primitive technology. Certainly look at things like speech and there's the first example too. You can say bad things, you can say good things, you can heal the world, you can hurt the world. I don't think anyone here says humanity would be better if we couldn't communicate. Right? We
Because they don't communicate.
But
People, I would say that the people who didn't communicate are probably dead, though.
Right,
So the people who had the power of the technology, whether it was communication, the ability to build alliances, the ability to do things, they're dead.
Right.
So we can sit here and say, oh, it's spiritually hurting us. And that's fine. It probably is. I agree with you to a certain extent. But that's going to be the dead group.
Right. The people that take the vow of silence, the people that say, oh, our religion is great, but we have a vow of celibacy, they're not going to keep having, they're going
to. An argument to be bullish about technology, but recognize the
Right.
power involved in it. It's instead of building a dam, like start rerouting, start creating new pathways in which could this be spiritual?
I think we had a comment from you for a long time. Did you?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. My name is Chris, by the way. I'm new-ish. It's my second time here.
Sorry, what was your name?
Chris.
Chris. Okay.
What you said today in this discussion helped me with the decision that I had in my mind. I do a lot of work with, I guess I'd call them the disenfranchised. They're the most victimized by the banks, by every system, pharma, food, education system, prison industrial complex, all of that. Like they've just got the short end of all of it and they're just trying to live and get by, and it's hard because they're compromised on so many levels. And I'm like in the guts of their messy lives, helping them survive, learn skills.
Is this part of your work, your job?
No, just my personal endeavors.
Oh, okay.
Kind of through the church, but without an official calling, just the need. On the other side of that, I have a zillion ideas in my head of books, programs, podcasts, information that I think would make the world better. And I just realized, and I always have this FOMO that when I'm over here helping this person just like get a job, even though they're out of prison and they have felonies and no one wants to hire them. And how do you explain that story? Even if you can get in front of a human who cares, because it's all an algorithm, right? And you can't rent anywhere because BlackRock owns the houses and you just get dumped in the trash pile of the applications, right? So I realized today, I don't think and I think this is more on the level you were talking than like, well, is speech technology? But I don't think the world needs my book ideas and another podcast and another whatever with my good ideas. It needs more of me in doing that stuff.
Actually,
Which was the
action.
back here, someone saying the feeding of the whatever it was that you said that sounded better, but like the widow and the fatherless, and like really helping people instead of writing my brainy stuff.
Yeah,
So-
one-on-one.
I want to push back a little bit on this and say, not that I disagree so much as that I think the idea that there is one course of action that would be more productive or more overall useful for humanity, it might be mistaken. Just the idea, I think it might be more, I don't know. I feel like we, even amongst this group here, probably have many different callings and gifts and talents. And
Well, I just meant I had that in my brain. I was like, oh, and I'm doing this. I'm not writing
Gotcha.
one of the 20 books in my mind. I just realized, like, I don't know if the world needs more of my
So
books.
for you,
Yeah.
you're saying this is
This
like this is the
solidified.
better use of your time. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
But if you want something to push back against, I'll one up Chris and say I think it'd be better if more people took that route
Yeah.
rather than the,
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I'd say is like,
Balance our lives.
there are times though when someone, because of their particular talents or gifts, like has a voice, a message for the world or whatever, and it ends up influencing a much larger group of
Right.
people because they have that gift or whatever. I don't know.
And maybe my book comes later when I've worked with 10,000 people, right? And I get this picture of like what's really happening. So maybe it's just later.
Yeah.
There was a masterclass by Melinda Gates on philanthropy and doing good works like that, and kind of breaking down this dichotomy even into more fragments. Like there are lots of ways that all of us can spend our time, and I think that if you hyperfixate on one of them, you're going to burn out. You're going to lose. Like you just articulated. Maybe your book comes later after you've done something else. And like we all have talents, we all have influence, we all have time and money and all that stuff to varying degrees and in different ways. And I think that if we
if we use them mindfully and think about ways, like, for example, my time is usually best spent, according to this masterclass, locally. And my money is best sent out of where I am now. Because right here, my dollar doesn't go as far as it does in poorer countries, for example. And so, so like a lot of our donations go out of the country, and a lot of our volunteer time goes locally. And so like that kind of thing, like breaking up your time and your thoughts, and it kind of connects back into something that I kind of pinned for a while. My thought is my algorithm on Instagram, for example, has been kind of like consciously curated to be almost entirely positive environmentalism news, because I feel like a lot of young people that I know are very, very convinced that the world will end, and so they are not applying to school or work, they're not pursuing relationships, they're having less sex, they're not doing living, they are giving up. And so I felt about a year and a half, 2 years ago, called to like sharing the ideas that we can save the world, that yeah, climate change is real. It is a big problem, and we can do things to fix it. And there are people taking action. Like it is a problem that will get worse, and it will suck, and species will go extinct, and people will die. But we will pull out of it, and we can have a future still. The world is not going to burn entirely. You know, like that kind of thinking. And so, like, I feel as though algorithms kind of depend on our feedback. And the idea of like technology kind of makes the world frictionless, and it's so much easier now to enter an echo chamber or to, like create slop or to eat unhealthily or whatever. Like the key, I think, is a little bit of intentional effort in the direction that we want to go. And so like if by default we mean something like when we are exhausted and stressed and we are just looking for a quick dopamine hit or a quick sugar rush or whatever, then like I prefer to believe that humanity at its default is not at stress. Or rather, I don't think that we should think of it that way. In the same way that I don't really like the idea of like the Buddhist principle that all life is dukkha, all life is suffering. And then there are moments where you're experiencing some temporary like pleasure or joy or something, but even there's a form of dukkha because you must acknowledge that it will end or that it could have been better even while you're experiencing it. And so the answer for that problem that they kind of state is baseline, that all life is suffering, is to remove desire from the world. And I would argue that you could very easily say that the zebra is black with white stripes, not white with black stripes, that the default could also be joy and peace and love and awe and all that. And sometimes you dip down into suffering. And that's true for different people's privilege is real. All of that is something that we need to acknowledge. But when it comes to this group in particular, and like people who are using social media and are victims of algorithms and like are addicted to chatting with AIs and stuff, I think that the answer for me has been just to be really intentional about how I use my technology. Like I make it a point to call my parents across the world at least once a week. And I make it a point to have cash on hand so that I can give it to the homeless person on the corner. And so like I try to be mindful of the technology that I have access to and use it intentionally.
I think that's perfect for what any individual can and should be doing now. Like that combined with Chris's, get out there and hands-on, active, be the change you want to see in the world. The questions that really bug me are the ones that seem out of my control, but which affect me and everyone else, which a lot of times aren't due to malice. They're due to a lack of the same kind of conscientious planning that you're talking about on the individual level, but perpetrated on the international level. I mean, I think social media is such a great example where it's like nothing malicious. It's just the fact that the payment structure for it was designed to be, money for eyeballs. and that automatically selects for rage baiting and doom scrolling and people retracting from the world rather than going out into it. And all of these things that in retrospect were foreseeable, but no one was motivated to see it. And it actually came probably from a good place where people are saying, we want the internet to be free. We don't want to have it be even $1 a year. But if we, in retrospect, if we'd paid for that, it's like we could have made social media actually make our lives better rather than having us become the product for someone else's shareholder value.
Okay, can I poll the group on something that too personal? Like, has anyone here ever raise your hand if you've ever taken a Sabbath from your tech?
From your check?
From your tech. From your tech.
You unplug.
Oh, okay. And keep your hands up if you've done that more than once, any kind of regularity. Oh, okay.
No regularity.
So I guess I'm curious, I think this question, I answer it differently for having done that, maybe as far as net good, net positive than I might have if I hadn't done that. And I'm not from the church in my background, so I have experience with alcohol, and I would say I guess until recently, I think it could have been said that some people struggle with alcohol addiction, but most people can handle it okay. And now just I guess what's changed in the last maybe 18 months about online gambling with men and other things, it sounds like it's actually heroin. Very few people can dabble in it and be okay. That's the exception, not the rule. So that's
Are you saying that about alcohol as well, or just
no. So I
just
think
gambling?
alcohol is how I used to think of tech. Okay, some people get addicted, but most people are fine. And now I'm today the internet is actually probably heroin. And I've met people who've done heroin and not occasionally, but I don't think I could try that and not get addicted.
What about, if you're just saying that people find it very difficult not to use the internet, I would agree. But if you're saying that the internet has the same sort of negative, mostly downsides and very little upside, like heroin, I would say no.
I guess I would just say it does seem to change your brain and has the addictive properties, so you can be functional using it, but you are different you. And this didn't even occur to me to try it. I was listening to an Orthodox Jewish woman talking about the holidays where on certain holidays you basically treat them like Shabbat. So she's when you get 3 days in a row where a 48-hour holiday is either right before or after Shabbos, she's it's crazy, you get your 90s brain back. She's you get it after 70 hours. And I was yeah, I've almost done that where I have to keep my phone, but yeah, it's.
Have you? So you've done it, right? You've done some, yeah. Tell us about your experiences. I'm curious.
If you want to, No, I fortunately I don't have the experience of having been addicted to opiates or something. So I can't say I know it's exactly like that, but I do know what it's like to my memory is different when I'm not using it. My comfort with boredom, my comfort with different feelings is just different. Yeah.
I wonder if anybody's had experience with specific aspects of the internet. Are people cutting out all your book on your e-reader, or you're cutting out
a lot of it. There's always a good podcast to listen to, often about productivity, and I'm the irony fans, I'll stop.
Can we all agree that short form videos are bad?
Yeah.
Now I feel so cultured when I watch a 2-hour movie. I'm good for you.
being so productive.
For a minute. So they did short form chat videos on people who struggled with anxiety and PTSD and things like that, and limited scope of short form videos of cat videos and things like that actually decreased their cortisol levels, helped them activate their parasympathetic nervous system, and
limited scope.
exactly within the limited scope. So I don't think the infinity scroll counts as that, but again, it's being more deliberate is,
Yeah, there was like a practice to maybe give as a model for
Yeah,
people,
so
which
you
is
could-
you had a really stressful moment that was like maybe scary, or you notice your brain wants to spiral. That's the time to play a game of Tetris, to do something
Yeah.
totally mindless,
Instead
to
of
watch
yelling
a
at your
video.
kids. Yeah.
And then there are other times where the response is to reflect on it deeply and write in your journal.
By the way, this did exist before the internet. Like,
Yeah.
my aunt played solitaire all the time. And everyone always did the crossword puzzle in New York Times, and still a lot of people still do. And there's like a lot of like occupying things that people did before
But I think it's more like gambling,
the
right?
internet.
Like you
So-
see doing pachinko.
Gambling, correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely. They've done studies on that too.
Yeah.
Wait, you think it's more like gambling than like reading?
Then like yeah, I would read the funnies in the paper, but like you read through it and you're done.
There are
Like you
actually
can only
studies-
read it so long.
Yeah, I heard what you're saying. You're just saying there's like that was
There's an endless wheel.
that was quickly finished.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
I got you.
discreet.
I agree with that.
Tension or potential suit with like, is it fair for these social media companies to have auto scroll features or auto play?
Yeah, I've heard this.
And
Yeah.
that's going to be issue because like the problem is not that there's a cat video or that there's all these things. The problem is that it's put in a structure that removes our agency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's also a problem, in my opinion, that the existence of interesting content is endless. That's what that like. I tell my kids about this a lot. Like, I remember a time when, there was an hour in the evening when nothing good was on TV after that, and you just kind of like went to sleep because you didn't have a lot else to do.
And like tell myself, what do you care about this?
Yeah.
No.
It is. And it's hard to say what's the optimal amount and then not only do it, but as a parent, try to make your kids.
Oh yeah, I
do
should
that.
have said this to you. Like, sometimes these discussions go for a long time, and please don't feel like we have to stay.
So we'll say.
So
I passed my bedtime and I got an hour to drive, so I am going to take off.
Oh,
So
okay. Yeah.
thank you. My mind's going to be racing all night because of
much.
everything. These are very, very good conversations. I appreciate all the thoughts.
Yeah. Thank you, Trent.
Yeah.